In this, my fourth talk, I shall be speaking about God as communion. Last talk, number 3, I looked at analogies of God taken from the human person. But I took models that are unipersonal, likening the Trinity to the different faculties in a single human being. But now let's look at analogies which understand the Trinity in interpersonal terms, in terms of mutual love. Now, this interpersonal approach to the mystery of the Trinity has proved very popular among modern theologians, and it's played a notable part in Russian religious thought in the late 19th and early 20th century, above all in the writings of Vladimir Solovyov, Father Pavel Florensky, and Father Sergei Bulgakov. There's an excellent book about all this by Michael Aksionov-Mirson called The Trinity of Love in Modern Russian Theology. But this particular way of looking at the Trinity as a mystery of mutual love also has ancient roots in the medieval West, but further back in the early fathers, both Greek and Latin. So, in this talk, I will take 3 representative authors, the one Greek and the other 2 Latin. My Greek witness is St. Basil the Great, Archbishop of Caesarea, who died around 379. And then my Latin witnesses are St. Augustine, Bishop of Hippo in North Africa, 4th and 5th century, and then the Scotsman, Richard of St. Victor, who lived in the 12th century. Once more we shall find, as with the unipersonal analogies, that East and West are not so far apart as is often assumed. I have a personal reason for choosing these particular 3 authors. Each has helped me in a special way in my personal quest for the kingdom of the Trinity. In his work on the Holy Spirit, one of the key terms that St. Basil the Great employs is the word koinonia, or koinonia, if you prefer to pronounce it that way, meaning communion, fellowship. Whereas St. Athanasius of Alexandria speaks of God predominantly in terms of essence or substance, assigning central significance to the term homoousios, consubstantial. St. Basil and the other 2 Cappadocians, St. Gregory the Theologian, St. Gregory of Nyssa, prefer to express God's unity in terms of the communion that exists between the 3 hypostases or persons. The unity of God, writes St. Basil, lies in the communion, koinonia, of the Godhead. The notion of Trinitarian koinonia is likewise emphasized by Basil's younger brother, St. Gregory of Nyssa. In the life-creating nature of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, he says, there is no division, but only a continuous and inseparable communion, koinonia, between them. It is not possible, he continues, to envisage any severance or division, such that one might think of the Son without the Father, or separate the Spirit from the Son. But there is between them an ineffable and inconceivable communion and distinction. Divine unity, that is to say, is not to be interpreted primarily in abstract or essentialist terms, as a unity of nature or substance, but it is to be understood above all in personal terms, as a unity established through the interrelationship, the koinonia, of the three hypostases. In the words of Metropolitan John Zizioulas of Pergamum, the being of God is a relational being. Without the concept of communion, it would not be possible to speak of the being of God. Here I would like to say that I'm very much indebted to Metropolitan John's understanding of the Trinity and the human person. In particular, I value his book, Being as Communion. In this connection, St. Gregory of Nazianzus, Gregory the theologian, points out that the names for Father and Son denote neither the divine essence nor the divine energy, but personal relationship. When you think of Father, you think naturally of Son. When you think of Son, your mind will go immediately to the idea of Father. These are relational terms. They express skersis, to use the Greek word, relations. Here Gregory anticipates Augustine's notion of the three persons as subsistent relations. Here then I found a first vital clue to the inner meaning of Trinitarian faith. The doctrine of the Trinity is a way of saying that God is communion or community. God is social and conciliar. There is within him something that corresponds, although at an infinitely higher level, to what we mean by society, to what we mean by the subornost or Catholicity of the Church. A second vital clue, alongside Basil's use of koinonia, I found in St. Augustine's great work on the Trinity. Before proposing his unipersonal trinities of the mind, to which I alluded in my last talk, Augustine proposes an interpersonal trinity of love as a model for our understanding of the triune God. Love, he says, involves three elements. First of all, the lover, amans, then that which is loved, quod amatur, the beloved, and then thirdly, the love or amor that passes reciprocally between the lover and the beloved. Amans, quod amatur, amor. Applying this to the Trinity, God the Father is seen as the lover, the Son is the beloved, and the Spirit is what Augustine terms the vinculum amoris, the bond of love, uniting Father and Son, the communion that subsists between them. So, whereas Basil applies the term communion to the Trinity as a whole, Augustine applies the term communion more specifically to the third person, the Holy Spirit. Now, most modern Augustinian specialists, and I'm certainly not an Augustinian specialist, take the view that his Trinity of love is far less important than the two Trinities of the mind, to which he devotes a great deal more space. The interpersonal Trinity of love, they maintain, is no more than a brief preliminary reflection before Augustine quickly lays this aside and proceeds to what really interests him, the unipersonal analogies based on the faculties of the human soul. For myself, I wonder whether this is altogether a fair estimate of Augustine's true intention. For at the end of his work on the Trinity, he returns to the interpersonal analogy of mutual love, and he suggests that among all the different analogies, this is perhaps the least inadequate. That is in Book 15 of his work. Now, it's often said that in their Trinitarian theology, the Cappadocians start from the three persons and work from this to an understanding of the divine unity. Augustine, on the other hand, so it is claimed, starts from the divine essence and then goes on to distinguish the three persons as relations within that essence. There is perhaps some truth in this, but I'm certainly not happy if we make a stark contrast of this kind. As regards Augustine, if full weight is given to the analogy of mutual love, then his understanding of the Trinity turns out to be more personalist and less essentialist than is commonly assumed. So, perhaps the theological difference between Hippo and Caesarea is not quite as great as appears at first sight. From an orthodox point of view, however, Augustine's Trinity of love suffers from two defects. First, in making the Spirit the mutual love that passes between the Father and the Son, it seems to lead directly to the filioque, that is to say, the doctrine of the double procession, according to which the Spirit proceeds both from the Father and from the Son. Now, it's certainly true that Augustine did teach the double procession of the Holy Spirit from both Father and Son. But he was never a filioquist in any stark or unqualified sense. When I hear my Orthodox brothers and sisters attacking Augustine, I sometimes wonder whether they have really read him. Augustine was careful to insist that the Spirit proceeds from the Father principaliter, principally or principially. The Spirit, says Augustine, proceeds from the Son only in a secondary and derivative sense, per donum patris, by the Father's gift. In other words, all that the Son has, he receives from the Father. The Father is the source within the Godhead. And so it's from the Father that the Son receives also the power to cause the Spirit to proceed. Now this means that in common with the Cappadocians, Augustine regards the Father as the ultimate source and sole origin within the Trinity. This is a key point in the Cappadocians, but Augustine also agrees. The Father is the principium within the Trinity, the source, the fountainhead, the beginning. He is the arche, the principle of origin within the Trinity. Augustine believes that just as firmly as does, for example, St. Basil or St. Gregory the theologian. You may recall that in an earlier talk I referred to St. Gregory Palamas, and I noted how Palamas, after describing the Spirit as common to both Father and Son, goes on to insist, however, that he derives his origin, his hypostatic origin, from the Father alone. When Palamas says this, he is not asserting anything with which Augustine would have disagreed. St. Gregory of Nyssa was prepared to say that the Spirit proceeds from the Father through the Son. Is this really so very different from Augustine's view, that the Spirit proceeds from both Father and Son, but from the Father principally, and from the Son only by the Father's gift? Once more, the distance between Cappadocia and North Africa turns out to be less than at first appeared. Augustine, then, was altogether